meeting of council. Just a reminder to everyone in the gallery that this meeting is being live cast and we cannot interrupt the meeting or record the meeting, and should that occur I will have to ask that person to desist and leave the meeting. I remind councillors to refrain from making any defamatory comments as well, as we are being webcast. Councillors, if I could ask you to rise as we do our acknowledgement of country and prayer. Yass Valley Council recognises the Ngunnawal people, the traditional custodians of the land, water and sky. We pay our respect to their elders, past, present and future emerging leaders. We extend our respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who live in the Yass Valley local government area. Councillors, I will now go to the prayer. Let us be still and remember the presence of God. As we commence our meeting, let us together pray for guidance and help. Join me in the prayer or take this moment to reflect. Almighty God, we ask your blessing upon this council. Direct and prosper our deliberations to the true welfare of Australia and the people of the Yass Valley. Amen. Please be seated. Councillors, we have an apology from Councillor David Carter. Could I have a move for that? So moved, Councillor Butler. Seconded, Councillor Cherry. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Item 3, do we have any declarations of pecuniary interests or special disclosures? Thank you, councillor.
Sorry, is a special disclosure that feeling menaced by a person?
I beg your pardon?
Is a special disclosure when you feel menaced by a person, like if a person's got menacing behaviour? Is that a special disclosure? I just don't really know. So after our meeting, a 4.5 hour
Sorry, Councillor Flannery, you'll need to stand.
So after our meeting, like a 4.5 hour meeting, I go running in the morning at 6:15, and on the parkway around the Yass River, which I run on every Friday morning, I was greeted by a member of the public who's also a proponent and kind of quite aggressively asked to speak to me. So I was wondering if that's kind of considered menacing behaviour that I should disclose.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Please be seated. Firstly, I think if this was of importance to you, the first thing that you should have done was bring it to the Chair's attention straight away. However, I appreciate that you're bringing it to us now, so I'll just ask for some governance advice in regards to what constitutes special disclosure.
Look, through you, Madam Mayor, it is something that probably needs to be dealt separately to the considerations of this evening. Obviously, what's happened is intimidation or harassment.
It's more menacing, like intimidation, more menacing,
Sure.
That's why I was wondering if it's a disclosure.
Sure. Look, the disclosures in this context are conflicts of interest.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what I guess we need to disclose here. But anything, behaviour outside of the context of the deliberation tonight is something we can deal with under other council policies.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Flannery, and thank you to our governance officer. And it's probably at this point in time that I should also note that who we have here in terms of our staff. On my far left, we have our development manager, Mr. Jeremy Knox, and available on the Teams link, we have our Director of Planning and Environment, Mr. Andrew Neal. We have our Director of Infrastructure, Mr. Cook, and we have our Acting CEO, Ms. Peter Gardner, and our governance, our governance officer, Ms. Caitlin Flint. So, councillors, to our item of business, we have in section 4 the review of the determination for 7 Henry Place, Yass. I'll just wait until we have a motion on the table so that questions can be answered. Sorry,
Putting a motion?
You're putting a motion. Please stand.
Yes.
Correct.
I like standing. I'm going to put a procedural motion, if I can please, that this meeting not proceed at this time.
I second that.
Thank you for that procedural motion, Councillor Cameron. I'll allow you to speak to the reasons why, and then as the chair, I will reserve my right to respond. Councillors, as a procedural motion, only the mover and the chair may speak to this item.
Okay, look, I was fairly shocked to hear about this extraordinary council meeting. After a long meeting last Thursday, where we covered a lot of ground, and obviously there were some controversial issues. But the reason why I'm putting this motion forward at the moment is I was shocked to see that item 6.2 in the previous council relating to seven-handed plays, the development application, had to all extent and purposes reappeared on this business paper. This matter suggesting that the development proceed with conditions was rejected 5-4 by council at the previous meeting on the last Thursday, and it was lost. I thought maybe this particular extraordinary council meeting might have been to assist the staff in helping elaborate the reasons for the rejection of that particular proposal. As the recommendation, though, seems to be open for revisiting the whole issue again, I was surprised that we did not have a motion of rescission for the previous motion, if that is the case. If it's the same sort of motion, I would have thought there would have been some indication that we were going to go back to that previous motion and perhaps rescind it. And we haven't had a rescission motion at all. We now have the possibility, and I hope it isn't the case, we now have the possibility that the previous motion, which was rejected, becomes a motion that could be accepted 6 days later. And therefore we would have two motions on the book, both relevant, both passed or whatever, or one rejected and one passed. And I think it would sort of make, surely this would be of some concern to members of the community, which one is valid, and I don't think it really enhances the reputation of council in regard to good governance. I suppose I'm suggesting that we move away from this at this stage. Maybe we could get advice from the Office of Local Government. I see you've already got some advice from the Office of Local Government as the correct way forward before returning to consider this matter further. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. In response to your request for a deferment, was it?
Yeah, basically.
So I'd just like to note that the item in the business paper is a legal option for us to proceed with. It's important to note that there was no resolution made at the last council meeting to determine this item at the meeting. So we had a lapse motion to approve and no further motion to refuse with tested reasons, and certainly nothing was circulated to me as the chair prior to that meeting. But as for the business of this meeting today, it is proceeding in accordance with the Model Code of Meeting Practice. The recommendation from council staff remains for approval, as the merit of the DA has been thoroughly assessed. Now, councillors may draft reasons for refusal to move as a different motion, provided those reasons possess appropriate planning merit and advice has been sought. Any motion contrary to the staff recommendation must be properly prepared and advocated for. So I would like to make a ruling against that, but I will test the meeting with that. So, councillors, I would like to have your vote on my decision to set aside the procedural motion to defer this matter.
Can I ask a question? Questions on that?
Certainly, Councillor Flannery, if it is to do with the procedural motion, you can put a motion of dissent, I believe, but I will just quickly check
I just want to ask a clarifying question so I know what comes up next.
So unfortunately, we're in the procedural motion debate in which only the mover, Councillor Cameron and myself may speak to it, and then the motion must be put without further discussion or debate from any other councillor. But certainly, once we have a motion on the table, should we proceed next to that, after we've tested the room as to whether or not this procedural, my ruling is the will of the council. So, Councillor Flannery, if you could just please be seated while I conduct the business of the council meeting. So we have a procedural motion to set aside. So councillors, I have ruled that this not proceed, that we conduct the business of the council. So I'm seeking your support in that. All those in favour of supporting the chair's ruling. We have Councillor Butler, Councillor McGrath, Councillor Cherry, Councillor Jones, Councillor Burgess, Councillor Rothwell. Those against, Councillor Cameron, Councillor Flannery. Now tested the will of the meeting and we'll proceed with the business before us. Councillors, we have a recommendation in the business paper before us. Councillor Cherry.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move the following motion, and if we could get that up on the screen, and I'll read it out for those that can't see the screen. Just waiting on it to come up on the screen. That's it. Madam Mayor, my fellow councillors, members of the gallery, for those watching, I move the following motion. That conditional development consent be issued for 6 detached dwellings at 7 Hanley Place, Yass, subject to additional conditions which require: 1. The community title subdivision to be registered prior to the issue of any occupation certificate. 2. Reduced height of landscaping to maximum maturity of approximately 1.5 along the driveway adjacent to 5 Hanley Place. 3. Details of external lighting associated with the development. External lighting is to be mounted, screened and directed in such a manner so as not to create a nuisance and for wherever possible being sensor active with a limited time that the light is on. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cherry. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Councillor Flannery. Councillor Cherry, you have the floor.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that the circumstances that have brought us to this extraordinary meeting are not ideal, but they do give us an opportunity to restore some clarity and confidence in our decision-making processes. When this application was previously before Council in 2025, I felt very comfortable supporting the refusal motion. That position was consistent with the peer review assessment undertaken by the planning staff at QPRC, and I believe it reflected a sound and defensible position based on the information that was available to us at that time. Since then, the applicant has exercised his legal right to invoke Section 8.2 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, which allows for review of the determination by the same consent authority, being this chamber. Subsequently, our Director of Planning, Mr. Andrew Neal, has undertaken a new assessment of the application and provided additional interpretation around the classification of the proposal as attached dwellings. While I may not have felt comfortable with that original conclusion, I do recognise that his assessment is something that we must give due consideration to as part of our responsibility as a consent authority. We as councillors are elected and expected to represent the best interests of the Yass Valley community. But we're also compelled to exercise that responsibility within the planning framework that governs developments across New South Wales, and those two responsibilities must be exercised in tandem. At the same time, it is clear to all of us that this topic has generated a great deal of emotion within our community. I've personally heard allegations of disturbing comments that have been exchanged during the course of this process. I find that deeply disappointing, and quite frankly, it makes me very sad. Yass is a small, thriving regional town. Regardless of where people stand on this development, we all share a common bond and a connected future. It is important that we remember that we are all neighbours first and foremost, and that disagreements about such issues should not come at the expense of basic respect principles or social cohesion. My fellow councillors, the motion before us recognises the revised planning assessment and takes practical and reasonable steps to address the amenity concerns raised by neighbouring residents with the additional conditions noted. And for that reason, I commend the motion to you all. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cherry. I'll now offer the floor to the seconder, Councillor Flannery.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am very vexed in this issue because
Sorry, are you speaking for the motion?
I am
Yes,
speaking,
thank you.
isn't that what you asked me to do? Like you said, if you want to speak for it, stand up. If you second, I was just clarifying if I misunderstood it.
Sorry, from your opening statement, I was worried that I had misheard. Please proceed.
No, it's all right. Thank you for the interruption, that's allowed me to gather my thoughts. So are we timing it from now, or has the time started?
No, you
Just a question, just checking. So I am speaking for the motion because I feel that there's been so much bias in bringing this meeting together and ill procedures and procedural unfairness. We left a meeting after 4.5 hours. You, Madam Chair, were given the opportunity, Councillor Carter asked specifically, what happens now? Do we need to give at, after the 1 hour 30 mark, 1 hour 43 mark at the meeting on the 26th of February, he asked, what should we do, set conditions, and what happens now? And it's lapsed. Now you have defended your point saying that no one gave a resolution. You've been in this chamber 14 years, I think, and you didn't say, maybe we need to come back next week. There's a whole range of things you as the chair should have done. I turned my attention to the Director of Planning, who I spoke to last night, who told me he couldn't write down reasons that we could reject this proposal. He could tell me but not write them down. Seems odd to me, don't you? Don't you think that's a little odd that you can't write down reasons for rejection? But he did give me 2 reasons for rejection, which is height and basically the aesthetics. So thus my fellow councillor, Councillor Chari, has put a motion forward about height, to reduce the height, so it does comply with the LEP. I also come up with another thing, and I guess this comes to your values, Madam Mayor, and that's one of the 7 deadly sins, as we call them. It's about greed, and I find this proposal greedy because it goes against what was originally proposed to the residents that live there. It's greedy for the land, it's greedy for our assets, and it's greedy for someone's view because it takes away something. And I really urge this council to look at the vote last week. There is no change to the paper. Not once in this new council paper does it say it was voted against. And that is what happened. And that's why I'm really, really upset by this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. I think it is my right as the chair and also the subject of what I find to be disparaging comments about my behaviour in this room needs to be defended. Councillors, we had a motion at our last meeting on the table. The recommendation was for approval. It is impossible to build in reasons for refusal into a recommendation that is for approval. On the old code of meeting practice, that would have been a foreshadowed motion which could have been signalled. It is not my job to guide every step of the way, and as we saw, there was a 4.5 hour meeting, and in fact when I tried to guide councillors in the first item, 6.1, I received objections to the guidance that I was giving. Having said that, at any opportunity during that 4.5 hour meeting that also included an adjournment, the option for a councillor to come to me and ask, is there another pathway, is available to them. We cannot add conditions of refusal after a motion has been put to the vote for a recommendation to approve. That would be an illegal motion. So I stand by my conduct in the meeting, and I think it is very important to note that the new Code of Meeting Practice is designed to bring decorum and respect to this process. And I note in the Code of Meeting Practice that in keeping order of these meetings, when councillors rise to ask a question, they are asked to do so succinctly, without argument, and without bringing other members of this council into disrepute. Councillors, so I will now proceed with any speakers against the motion, although I do believe 90% of what we just heard appeared to be against the motion. I will now call for another speaker, if there is one, against the motion before us, which is to approve. Do I have a speaker against? Councillor Cameron, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, although Councillor Cherry has put in some extra conditions, which I think is a valid attempt to try and improve the overall motion, and I think that's fair enough. I do think that it doesn't really change the nature of what's happening here in regard to this particular development. I think I've raised a number of arguments on Thursday, and I think I don't want to repeat them in detail. I think I would just like to mention a couple of things. I think with the EPA section 4.15, we are basically encouraged to try and take into account quite a number of different aspects of the impact of a development on particularly the surrounding area, the neighbourhood, and also with the community as well. I think I don't think we've really looked at the social and environmental impacts in any real detail. I think one of the things that, having walked up that area a number of times, taken my dogs up there, it seems to me as though it's an area of high value, if I can put it that way. It's a development area where the houses are extremely pleasant, they have good views, and they've obviously quite a considerable amount of money has been spent on these particular houses to maximise the view and to make it look like a really progressive and viable community. And I think really with this particular development, multi-development, I do think it takes away from the whole area. And I think that's the reason why in the initial process there were quite a number of submissions, mainly I think to a large extent from the immediate neighbourhood against the development. And you might ask, well, you know, everyone's going to say that, you know, we can't have anything that detracts from the value of our particular place. But I think that particular area is an area of concern. It looks good. Some of the other areas up the back of Rosyth Street, further up, sort of try and imitate that. And the value of those houses means that we've got residential development in the town that looks good and is good and encourages people to go in for that sort of development. So I think we haven't perhaps taken that into enough consideration. I think the other issue that we haven't really looked at in detail is the safety issue. We often talk about safety in terms of traffic, particularly active transport. We've got people cycling, we now have people on e-bikes, we've got people on lots of different things that sort of go down the main street and nearly run you over. But I don't think we have a safety, well, I think we have a safety issue up here when you've got 12 possible cars in those 6 double garages in that irregular squeezed in space. And I think it really is going to build up quite a number of cars up in that limited area. As I said, I think the public submissions were initially quite against it. Obviously there's been some work to get public submissions in that are a little bit more favourable. But I think, from my point of view, I think we have a development that I think, and I think some councillors have mentioned that we need this type of development. Don't disagree with that at all. I think that's a good point. I just think the block, from my point of view, and another councillor has also pointed out that it's too big with 6. I said 3 or 4. The other councillor, Councillor McGrath, said 5. I think it's a real squeeze in, and I don't think it's very apt. I sort of would just like to finish up by saying, I think one of the things that's upset me a bit is the LEP. The LEP, as I've mentioned to the director, is 2013. It's completely out of date, and we're looking at perhaps fixing it up in 2028. What have we got this LEP for when we sort of, to my mind, we are encouraging people to look at it very closely and find ways to get the outcomes that the developer wants, maybe needs, but it's not what the community wants or needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Do I now have a speaker for the motion? Councillors, in noting that I allowed this extraordinary meeting, I will speak briefly to this item. As before, I've noted that we have a housing diversity issue in Yass. We have high demand on our family homes, our 3-bedroom with a backyard, and we are yet to find a way to cater for professionals. Sorry, that's all right. We have yet to find a way to sufficiently cater for professionals, for people who do not want large yards, and if we can cater for this market, we can free up some of those family-style homes, which helps housing affordability within Yass, I believe, for particular markets. We have an opportunity to create some medium-density areas around the Yass township, with 60% of our workforce going out of our LGA every day for work. We need to be conscious of what will increase foot traffic to our shops so that when we need them, they're there. I commend the motion to you, and if there's no further speakers for and against, I'll now pass to Councillor Cherry to close.
None further, thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Councillor Cherry. Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour of the motion for you to approve. We have Councillor Butler, Councillor McGrath, Councillor Cherry, Councillor Jones, Councillor Burgess, Councillor Rothwell. All those against, Councillor Cameron and Councillor Flannery. The motion is passed. Thank you, councillors, for your attendance here today. It is now closed.